June 6th, 1944, Normandy, the hedgerows behind Utah Beach. Private Don Malarkey of Easy Company, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, crouches behind a hedgerow with his unit at Breakhall Manor. German artillery is shelling American positions on the beach. Thousands of men are dying in the surf while he fights inland. Lieutenant Richard Winters has just led 12 paratroopers against a battery of 4 105mm guns defended by 50 Wehrmacht soldiers. And in the middle of this assault, in the middle of bullets snapping past his head, in the middle of men dying around him, Don Malarkey sees something on a dead German soldier lying in an open field. He thinks it is a Luger. What happens next defies all logic, all training, all survival instinct. Malarkey breaks from cover, he sprints into the kill zone. Bullets kick up dirt around his feet, as he later described it, like a late spring hailstorm. Lieutenant Winters is screaming at him to get down, to get back, to stop. Malarkey keeps running, he reaches the body, he looks down. It is not a Luger, it is an artillery sighting device.
You got your friggin' Luger? You want us to go get it for you, stupid Mick?
He has nearly died for a piece of optical equipment. As he admitted decades later, without thinking, I went running out in that field and going to get myself a souvenir. Right off the bat, I went brain dead. This was not an isolated incident of temporary insanity, this was an epidemic. American soldiers did not just want German Lugers, they needed them with a desperation that bordered on madness. They stole them from each other, they paid fortunes for them, they killed for them. And in at least one documented case, a Luger killed its new American owner just 3 days after he finally obtained one. The question is not whether American troops were obsessed with this German pistol, the question is why. Why did this particular weapon, out of all the guns in the European theatre, drive otherwise rational men to acts of suicidal stupidity and fraternal betrayal? The answer begins not in 1944, but decades earlier, in the darkened cinemas and pulp magazines of 1930s America. The Luger entered the American imagination long before Pearl Harbor. The doughboys of the First World War had brought home thousands of them, and in those days, no gun laws restricted imports. If a soldier could capture, trade, or buy a pistol on the Western Front, he could carry it onto a ship and walk it through customs without a single form to fill out. By 1918, the Luger was already one of the most sought-after souvenirs of the Great War. Fathers showed these trophies to their sons. The sons grew up knowing exactly what a Luger looked like, exactly what it represented. The distinctive silhouette burned itself into American consciousness. No other pistol looked anything like it. That long barrel pointing forward like an accusing finger. The swept back grip angled at precisely 55 degrees. The toggle action mounted at the rear, those distinctive ears that rose and fell with each shot. Where American pistols like the Colt 1911 were blocky and utilitarian, the Luger was sleek and aggressive. One collector description captured it perfectly. This is not a blocky, friendly, liberty-loving Colt. This is a tool of militarism. Then Hollywood took over. Throughout the 1920s and 30s, the Luger became visual shorthand for villainy in American cinema. When a mysterious figure in a film drew a pistol, audiences knew the shape instantly. The bad guy always carried a Luger. German spies carried Lugers. Gangsters with foreign accents carried Lugers. The weapon became inseparable from its association with menace. Every war picture, every spy thriller, every crime drama reinforced the same message. The Luger was special. The Luger was dangerous. The Luger was desirable. Raymond Chandler gave his hard-boiled detective, Philip Marlowe, a Luger to carry in the novels, merging American tough guy mythology with exotic continental firepower. Pulp magazines featured the pistol on countless covers. Adventure stories described heroes wresting Lugers from the hands of defeated enemies. A generation of American boys absorbed this imagery before they were old enough to enlist. By the time they landed on foreign beaches, they already knew exactly what they wanted to bring home. The mythology had consequences that military planners never anticipated. Soldiers entered combat with preconceived desires. They knew about the Luger before. They knew about the MG42 or the 88mm flat gun or the Tiger tank. Those weapons would teach them fear through experience. The Luger taught them want through imagination. The result was a black market that distorted military discipline and cost men their lives. Georg Johann Luger was born on March 6, 1849, in the Tyrol region of Austria. He trained as an engineer and found employment with Deutsche Waffen- und Munitionsfabriken, known as DWM, one of Germany's premier arms manufacturers. His task was to improve upon an earlier pistol design by Hugo Borchardt. The Borchardt C93 was mechanically innovative, using a toggle lock system derived from the Maxim machine gun, but it was impractical as a military sidearm. A bulky mainspring housing extended behind the grip, making the weapon awkward to holster and difficult to aim. Luger saw the potential buried inside the awkward package. He spent years refining what would become his masterpiece. The transformation required rethinking nearly every element of the original design. Luger relocated the mainspring from its external housing into a compact arrangement hidden inside the grip. He angled that grip to 55 degrees, creating a pointing angle so natural that shooters remarked the pistol aimed itself. The hand simply extended forward and the barrel aligned with the target. No other pistol of the era offered this instinctive shooting characteristic. Most importantly, Luger created an entirely new cartridge to feed through his refined mechanism. The 7.65mm Parabellum came first, but military customers wanted more power. Luger responded with the 9x19mm Parabellum, named from the Latin phrase si vis pacem parabellum, meaning if you desire peace, prepare for war. This cartridge would outlive its creator by more than a century. It remains the most popular handgun caliber in the world today. Police officers, soldiers, and civilians on every continent carry pistols chambered for the round Georg Luger, designed in an Austrian workshop before the turn of the 20th century. The toggle lock mechanism itself deserves examination. Upon firing, the expanding gases drive the bullet forward while simultaneously pushing the barrel and toggle assembly rearward. Barrel and toggle move together for approximately 6mm. Then the toggle strikes a cam surface machined into the frame, causing the knee joint to hinge upward, exactly like a human knee bending in the wrong direction. The barrel stops moving while the toggle continues its arc. This unlocking motion extracts and ejects the spent cartridge case. A powerful spring then drives everything forward again, stripping a fresh round from the magazine and returning the toggle to its locked position. The cycle completes in a fraction of a second. The mechanical ballet is visually distinctive. Those toggle ears rise and fall with each shot, creating a signature unlike any other pistol ever made. Shooters can identify a Luger in operation from dozens of meters away just by watching the action cycle. The movement is almost organic, that knee joint bending and straightening with each round fired. Some have compared it to watching a small mechanical creature perform its single programmed task. The specifications of the standard P08, adopted by the German army in 1908, established the template for military pistols. Overall length measured 223mm. Barrel length was 100mm. Unloaded weight came to 870 grams. The magazine held 8 rounds of 9mm Parabellum ammunition. Muzzle velocity varied between 1,070 and 1,200 feet per second, depending on ammunition type and condition. These specifications made the Luger a formidable combat handgun, accurate out to 50 meters in trained hands, reliable when properly maintained. Production numbers across 45 years of manufacture reached totals that explain how so many ended up in American possession. DWM produced approximately 818,000 Lugers. The Erfurt Arsenal manufactured 519,000. Mauser, which took over primary production in 1930, built roughly 943,500. Simpson contributed 11,900 units. Krieghoff produced 13,825, primarily for Luftwaffe aircrew. The Swiss Waffenfabrik Bern added another 47,701 for Swiss military service. The total across all manufacturers reached somewhere between 2.5 and 3 million pistols. The vast majority ended up on battlefields. Hundreds of thousands ended up in American duffel bags. Variants multiplied over the decades of production. The artillery Luger, sometimes called the Long P08, featured an 8-inch barrel with a tangent rear sight optimistically calibrated to 800 meters. A wooden shoulder stock could be attached to the grip, and a 32-round snail drum magazine transformed it into something approaching a carbine. German stormtroopers carried these in the trench raids of the First World War. The Navy model carried a 6-inch barrel with a 2-position rear sight adjustable for 100 and 200 meters. Commercial variants appeared with different barrel lengths and calibers, some chambered for the original 7.65mm Parabellum cartridge rather than the more powerful 9mm. Presentation Lugers represented the absolute pinnacle of the gunmaker's art. Records indicate that only 10 factory-engraved Lugers were ever produced, all by Krieghoff for Hermann Göring's hunting circle. These featured gold or platinum plating, ivory grips carved with Germanic oak leaf and acorn patterns, and deeply engraved scrollwork across every metal surface. A documented gold-plated Mauser P08, presented by Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop to Ambassador Franz von Papen, carried the von Papen family coat of arms. Auction estimates have placed its value between $50,000 and $75,000. These were weapons as art objects, never intended for combat, tokens of political favour among the Nazi elite. If you are finding this examination of the Luger's history and the obsession it created worthwhile, a quick subscribe helps more than you know. It takes just a second and helps the channel continue producing content like this. Right, let's continue with how desire for these pistols played out on the battlefield. The economics of the Luger trade reveal the depth of American obsession. On the black market that flourished behind Allied lines, a Luger fetched $100. Consider what that figure meant in 1944. A private earned $50 per month. A Luger cost 2 months' pay. Adjusted for inflation, that $100 equals roughly $1,700 to $1,800 today. Soldiers were paying the equivalent of a mortgage payment for a single handgun. Pulitzer Prize-winning cartoonist Bill Mauldin captured the economics perfectly in Stars and Stripes magazine. He drew German prisoners offering their wares to American captors like salesmen at a bazaar. Luger, $100. Camera, $150. Iron Cross, $12. It is good to be captured by Americans. The cartoon was satire grounded in documentary truth. The Luger commanded nearly 10 times what an Iron Cross was worth. The decoration that German soldiers earned through combat valor was pocket change compared to the pistol on their hip. The Luger P08, Germany's actual primary sidearm during most of the war, sold for only $50 to $75 on the same black market. SS daggers approached Luger value at $50 to $100, but only because of their dark association with the regime's most notorious organization. Stahlhelm helmets went for $15 to $30, bayonets for $10, Wehrmacht belt buckles for $5. Nothing matched the Luger. Nothing came close. Combat infantrymen found the trophies but could not carry much extra equipment while fighting for their lives. They sold or traded to mechanized and armored units moving up behind them, units with vehicle space for souvenirs that infantry could not carry. Those units sold to rear echelon personnel at higher prices still. At each step in the sales chain, the price increased. The frontline soldier who captured a Luger from a dead German officer might sell it for $60. The tank crew that bought it might sell it for $80. The quartermaster clerk who bought it from them might pay $100. Each transaction moved the trophy further from danger and closer to a ship heading home. As one veteran, Andre Beaumont, recalled years later, we could have piled up all those weapons and Luger pistols and sold them as souvenirs and become millionaires because there was a big market in German weapons, especially Luger pistols. You could sell those for a couple of $100. Guys from the Air Force, they would die for something like that. The final phrase was not metaphorical, men did die. Corporal Donald Hubler of Easy Company, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, had hunted desperately for a Luger throughout the entire war. He talked about it constantly. He searched every German position his unit captured. He checked every dead enemy officer. The Luger eluded him through Normandy, through Holland, through the autumn of 1944. Then came the Battle of the Bulge. In the frozen forests around Bastogne in January 1945, with temperatures dropping to minus 20 degrees Celsius and American forces surrounded by German armor, Hubler finally obtained his prize. The circumstances were as dramatic as any Hollywood scene. A German officer was attempting to escape on horseback, galloping away from a firefight. Hubler raised his rifle, he fired. The officer fell. Hubler ran to claim his prize. After months of searching, after all those bodies checked and positions cleared, he finally had a Luger. 3 days later, on January 3rd, 1945, the pistol accidentally discharged inside Hubler's pocket. The bullet severed his femoral artery. He bled to death in the snow before medics could reach him. The men of Easy Company watched helplessly as their friend died from the trophy he had spent the entire war trying to obtain. The Luger killed him within 72 hours of his finally getting one. In bitter irony, Sergeant Carwood Lipton later gave that same pistol to Don Malarkey, the man who had nearly died sprinting into a kill zone at Breakhall Manor 6 months earlier. Lipton thought it might help Malarkey cope with the accumulated trauma of combat. The gesture was well-intentioned. The symbolism was unintentionally dark. The deadliest souvenir of the war passed from one Easy Company paratrooper to another, its curse apparently lifted, its new owner, finally, someone who had survived the madness of wanting one. The lengths men went to obtain Lugers strained all regulations and military discipline. The 80th Article of War technically prohibited buying, selling, trading, or in any way dealing in or disposing of captured or abandoned property for profit, punishable by fine or imprisonment. The regulation was universally ignored. Officers knew about the black market. Many participated in it. Enforcement would have required arresting half the American army in Europe. William Foley, an infantry veteran, confirmed the pricing structure in his post-war memoirs. Lugers were worth $100 apiece in rear echelon areas. SS Death's head rings should be worth anywhere from $50 to $150 apiece. He described the market matter-of-factly, without shame or justification. Everyone was doing it. The trophy trade was simply part of the war. Don Malarkey's behaviour was not unique. According to the National Churchill Museum, he broke from his own company on a few occasions at the battles of Carentan and Breakhall Manor, risking his life just to try and obtain a Luger for himself. This was not a single moment of battlefield insanity. This was a pattern. This was compulsion. The trophy had become more valuable than survival itself. Other soldiers showed similar patterns. The Luger represented something that transcended rational calculation of risk and reward. The Germans noticed. They could not help but notice when American troops were dying to obtain their officers' sidearms. The Wehrmacht recognized an opportunity for asymmetric warfare that cost them almost nothing and killed Americans without firing a shot. Stephen Ambrose documented the German response in Band of Brothers. American soldiers frequently looted fallen German officers of their Lugers. Soon the Germans realized the longing for Lugers and used it to their advantage by booby-trapping the weapon with explosives, utilizing it as bait against the Allies. The tactic was elegant in its simplicity. Leave a Luger in an obvious place, connect it to an explosive charge, wait for an American soldier to claim his prize. The very first act any soldier performed upon obtaining a new pistol, checking the action or pulling the trigger, became the triggering mechanism for his own death. A February 1945 US intelligence bulletin made the danger explicit in formal military language, charges concealed in weapons. The Germans sometimes conceal a small charge in the mechanism of a rifle or Luger pistol that they plan to leave behind in a fairly obvious place to attract the attention of Allied soldiers. The charge, which is sufficiently powerful to injure a man severely, is detonated if the trigger of the weapon is pressed. The methods varied. Some Lugers were wired to landmines buried beneath them. Pick up the pistol and the mine detonates. Some were connected by thin wire to concealed grenades. The wire tension released the spoon when the pistol moved. Some contained explosive charges hidden inside the grip or mechanism itself. These were the most insidious. The pistol looked completely normal. Only pulling the trigger revealed its true nature. The phenomenon was not new. First World War warnings about booby-trapped Lugers had circulated among American troops in 1918. A quarter century later, the same tactic worked again. Human psychology had not changed. The desire for the trophy overrode caution in soldier after soldier. American intelligence complained bitterly in official reports that souvenir hunting interfered greatly with the prompt collection of intelligence data. Lives were actually lost, or the progress of battle impeded, by soldiers who endangered the lives of comrades, as well as their own, by seeking some useless souvenir. The institutional frustration was palpable. Troops removed nameplates from vehicles that might have identified enemy unit movements. They picked up optical equipment that could have revealed German technological developments. They left enemy quarters in disorder, sometimes destroying valuable intelligence information in their hunt for personal trophies. The warnings continued throughout the war. Unit commanders lectured their men. Intelligence officers distributed bulletins. Medical personnel treated the casualties. None of it worked. No amount of official warning, no number of booby-trap casualties, no quantity of disciplinary threats could overcome the psychological power of the Luger as symbol. The trophy represented something beyond its material value. It was proof that you had been there, proof that you had faced the enemy, proof that the enemy had lost and you had won. Every other souvenir was merely interesting. The Luger was transformative. It changed your status among the men around you. For that transformation, men accepted risks they would have considered insane in any other context. War Department Circular No. 353, issued August 31st, 1944, attempted to impose some order on the chaos. The regulation authorized retention of war trophies by military personnel in order to improve morale, officially acknowledging what everyone already knew. Soldiers were going to take souvenirs regardless of regulations. Better to channel the impulse than fight it. But the circular established limits. Items containing explosives were prohibited. Items valuable for intelligence purposes were prohibited. Machine guns were forbidden under the National Firearms Act of 1934. A subsequent regulation dated May 28, 1945, added a further restriction. Each soldier could bring home only one firearm. Most soldiers ignored this limit entirely. Official registration required paperwork that few bothered to complete. A certificate in duplicate, signed by a superior officer, stating that the bearer was officially authorized by the theatre commander to retain the listed articles. The Customs Bureau would take one copy. The original remained with the bearer as proof of legitimate ownership. Finding a Second World War trophy pistol complete with its original capture papers today is genuinely rare among collectors. Most soldiers never bothered with the bureaucracy. Those who did often lost the documentation over the following decades. Circumvention methods were creative, widespread, and occasionally desperate. While regulations explicitly prohibited mailing firearms capable of being concealed on the person, soldiers mailed pistols home piece by piece anyway. The barrel in one package addressed to home, the frame in another addressed to a different family member, the toggle assembly in a third. The explicit prohibition in official regulations suggests the practice was common enough to warrant specific mention. The post office was not fooled, but enforcement proved sporadic at best. Mail censors had other priorities. Officers held natural advantages in the smuggling operation. One historical account noted that to get around customs, as well as nosy commanders, enlisted personnel found creative ways to sneak their treasures home. Officers, on the other hand, did not need to worry about the prying eyes of superiors. A captain could walk through customs with a Luger on his hip and paperwork in his pocket with minimal scrutiny. A private had to hide his trophy inside a gas mask bag or wrapped in dirty laundry and pray that no one searched his belongings too carefully. One veteran recorded the desperate measures some men resorted to when faced with confiscation. I had a piece just like this, but I threw it overboard on the way home to keep those officers from confiscating it. The sentence reveals layers of frustration and defiance. Rather than surrender a captured weapon to an officer who would claim it for himself, the soldier destroyed it. If he could not have it, no one would. Another veteran described the accumulated losses from such acts of spite. There must be a path of steel on the bottom of the ocean from Japan to San Francisco. The reference to the Pacific Theatre indicates the trophy phenomenon was not limited to Europe. Any souvenir that could not be hidden was sometimes destroyed rather than surrendered. Possession mattered less than denial. The men would rather nobody have it than see an officer claim what they had risked their lives to capture. The scale of trophy collection defies precise measurement, but anecdotal evidence suggests enormous numbers. The US Army's 28th Infantry Division, comprising approximately 5,000 men, left the European theatre with 20,000 war trophies. That averages to 4 souvenirs per soldier, though distribution was certainly uneven. Some men carried nothing, either by choice or circumstance. Others had duffel bags, clinking with the accumulated spoils of victory. No credible estimate exists for total German pistols brought home across the entire American military. Historians have described the numbers only as massive, tens of thousands at minimum, perhaps hundreds of thousands. The flow continued for months after the German surrender, as occupation troops had unlimited opportunity to acquire souvenirs through purchase, trade, or simple collection from abandoned facilities. Sergeant Donald Burgett of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment described the scene at war's end in his memoirs. At the end of the first day, we had a stack of pistols of all description well above 6 feet high and about 12 feet in diameter. Troopers constantly picked through this pile for choice: Lugers, Walthers, Berettas, P38s, old broomstick models. The broomstick referred to the Mauser C96, another distinctive German pistol with its own collector following. But even in a mountain of captured enemy weapons, the hierarchy held firm. The Luger always got picked first. Here is the irony that veterans themselves came to understand only later, if they understood it at all. The pistol they had killed and died and stolen from each other to possess was not even Germany's primary sidearm during the Second World War. The Luger had ceased production in 1942. The Wehrmacht's procurement office had already declared it obsolete, too expensive and too time-consuming to manufacture in the quantities a modern industrial war demanded. The Walther P08 had replaced it as the standard service pistol. The weapon American soldiers wanted was the weapon German soldiers were no longer being issued. The economics told the story from the German perspective. The Luger cost $7.83 to manufacture in early 1940s currency. The Walther P38 cost only $4.13. The Luger required extensive hand-fitting of parts, with individual components numbered to match specific frame serial numbers. Interchangeability was limited. The P38 used a simpler locked breech design that tolerated manufacturing variation and field conditions far better. It took almost half the time to produce. By September 1942, Luger production had officially ended. The last 1,000 pistols were delivered to the German army in December 1943, clearing out final inventory. Over 1,200,000 Walther P38s were produced during the war, vastly outnumbering wartime Luger output. The P38 was the pistol German soldiers actually carried. The Luger was the pistol American soldiers wanted them to carry. Mythology trumped reality. The silhouette mattered more than the statistics. Within the Wehrmacht itself, the Luger had occupied a peculiar status position during its years of service. It was typically issued to members of crew-operated weapons teams, non-commissioned officers, and company-grade officers. Interestingly, field-grade and flag officers typically armed themselves with smaller, more concealable sidearms. One researcher noted that a senior officer voluntarily carrying a Luger would have been unusual. The Luger was the weapon of the Fighting Officer Corps, the lieutenants and captains who led men at platoon and company level. Capturing one meant you had encountered an officer, and that officer had lost. Manufacturing quality remained exceptional throughout production, even as Germany's war situation deteriorated. Lugers were manufactured to exacting standards using the highest quality materials of the day. Precision tolerances were so tight that parts required hand-fitting during assembly. Many First World War era P08s remained completely serviceable through the Second World War, 25 to 30 years of hard use later. The finish on early examples featured hand-rubbed rust bluing that resisted corrosion beautifully. Even wartime cost-cutting measures that introduced salt bluing and Bakelite grips in the final production runs did not compromise mechanical precision. A Luger from 1942 functioned as reliably as one from 1914. Georg Luger had designed a weapon that would function for decades if properly maintained. His toggle lock system, while more complex than simpler tilting barrel or rotating barrel designs that would dominate post-war pistol development, proved remarkably durable in practice. Technical Sergeant Robert Emery of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment captured a 1937 manufactured Luger during the Battle of the Bulge. The circumstances were as brutal as any in that desperate winter campaign. American forces were surrounded. German armor was pressing from every direction. Emery found himself near a disabled German panzer tank. He climbed onto the vehicle. Inside, he discovered a dead officer. The description in historical accounts is graphic. The man's head was gone. His lungs had been sucked out by the catastrophic overpressure of whatever had destroyed the tank. Emery cut the belt from the body. He claimed the pistol. He gave it to his best friend, a soldier named Gordy. 61 years later, in 2006, that Luger was returned to the Emery family. The original capture papers had survived all those decades, passed down through Gordy's family until someone thought to return the pistol to its original captor's descendants. The documentation had outlived most of the men who had handled the weapon. The story had become family legend on both sides. The collecting market that emerged after the war became one of the most sophisticated in the firearms world. Jan C. Still established himself as the preeminent scholar, publishing definitive reference works including Imperial Lugers, Third Reich Lugers, and Weimar Lugers. These books catalogued every variation, every manufacturer, every date, code, and proof, marked that distinguished one Luger from another. Every detail affects value in today's market. Matching serial numbers are critical to collectors. Original manufacturers numbered each major component to match the frame. A mismatched toggle, barrel, or magazine reduces prices significantly because it indicates the pistol has been assembled from parts of different guns. Original finish condition matters. Reblued pistols are worth less than those retaining original finish, even with wear. Manufacturer and date matter. Some years and factories are rarer than others. Documented provenance from a known veteran with capture papers matters most of all, connecting the object to a specific human story. Current market values span an enormous range. A basic Second World War era Luger with matching numbers and original holster sells for $3,000 to $5,000 at retail. High condition First World War era examples with matching magazines and matching holsters can reach $4,000 to $7,000 or more. Artillery Lugers command significant premiums due to their relative rarity and dramatic appearance with that long barrel. Navy models also bring premium prices. At the absolute peak of the market, a US .45 caliber trial Luger sold for $430,000 at a 2010 auction. This was one of only 2 or 3 known examples from the early 1900s when Georg Luger was attempting to sell his design to the American military. The United States nearly adopted the Luger as its standard sidearm before choosing the Colt 1911 instead. Those trial pistols, chambered for the American .45 caliber cartridge rather than the 9mm Parabellum, became among the rarest firearms in the world. A Hitler Guard German Luger with flashlight and holster brought $184,000 at a 2012 auction. The association with the Nazi leader's personal security detail added dark provenance that drove the price far beyond what the mechanical object alone would command. Collectors pay for history as much as for steel and wood. The weapon that soldiers paid $100 for in 1945 now commands prices that would buy a house in many American cities. The investment, measured purely in financial terms, proved rather good. Measured in terms of lives lost, careers ended, friendships destroyed, and military discipline shattered, the cost was considerably higher. Margaret Truman, daughter of President Harry Truman, made an observation about the First World War that applied with equal force to the Second. It was said that the French fought for their country, the British fought for freedom of the seas, and the Americans fought for souvenirs. The Luger P08 was the ultimate souvenir. A piece of the enemy you could hold in your hand, bring home, and display forever as proof that you had been there and you had won. June 6, 1944, Normandy. Private Don Malarkey finishes his suicidal sprint across the kill zone at Breakourt Manor. He stands over the dead German soldier, breathing hard, heart pounding, hands shaking from adrenaline and fear. He had expected to see the distinctive toggle of a Luger pistol. Instead, he sees an artillery sighting device. He has nearly died for nothing. Malarkey survived that day. He survived Normandy. He survived Operation Market Garden in Holland. He survived the frozen hell of Bastogne during the Battle of the Bulge. He survived the crossing of the Rhine and the drive into Germany. He survived the war. He eventually got his Luger, the bloodstained trophy that had killed Donald Hubler, passed to him by Sergeant Carwood Lipton as a kind of therapy for accumulated trauma. He carried it home. He lived with it for decades. The pistol that had made him brain dead with desire on the first day of the invasion became part of his story, inseparable from his experience of the war. Every time he looked at it, he could remember Breakourt Manor and Carentan and Bastogne. He could remember the friends who had died. He could remember Don Hubler bleeding out in the snow from a self-inflicted wound caused by that same pistol tucked carelessly in a pocket. Thousands of other American soldiers carried their own Lugers home on the ships crossing the Atlantic after Germany's surrender. Some had captured them in combat, taking them from dead or surrendering German officers in firefights where survival was measured in seconds. Some had bought them from comrades who needed cash more than trophies. Some had stolen them from fellow soldiers. The theft of a Luger considered so serious that fistfights and worse resulted. Some had traded months of pay to rear echelon profiteers who had never heard a shot fired in anger. Some had risked courts-martial to mail their pistols home piece by piece, the barrel in one package and the frame in another, reassembled by family members who had never seen such a weapon before. Some had thrown them overboard from troop ships rather than surrender them to officers at customs inspection. All of them understood, in a way that defied rational explanation, that the pistol mattered. It was not about the metal. It was not about the mechanism. It was not about the 9mm parabellum cartridge or the 55-degree grip angle or the toggle lock that rose and fell like a mechanical heartbeat with each shot fired. It was about victory. It was about proof. It was about carrying home a piece of the enemy you had defeated. And for that, American officers did indeed fight each other and steal from each other and sometimes die. All for a German pistol designed in an Austrian workshop at the end of the 19th century by an engineer named Georg Johann Luger, who could never have imagined what his creation would come to mean. The Luger P08, the most coveted trophy of the Second World War,